always disappear.
Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Ellen Feaheny. Ellen and I are going to talk about the importance of a cloud-based workplace. Now, Ellen, before we go any further, where can people get hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn at Ellen Feaheny. It's my full name, as well as Twitter.
Okay, so just and so your second name is Feaheny, in case people
Heny.
Yes,
There's a
Eny. Sorry, Fehen. You've got a great background in cloud and web-based services. Just give us a brief outline of that, of how you are where you are today.
Yeah, sure. So myself and my team, we've been working in cloud since really before 2015, but as our own platform since 2015. Prior to that, we were integrating into some of the early cloud platforms from 2010. So yeah, so cloud's been our world for the last 10 years.
So there's a lot of organizations that have got on-premise systems. And of course, COVID has come along, and all of a sudden we're all working from home, and we need access to cloud. I mean, what's the difference between cloud and on-premise? Or you use the term for cloud. You often use the term service-based and server-based as the. So what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so cloud has so many benefits, but people that have not been on cloud, they don't quite always understand those benefits unless you're sitting in IT. But the most obvious is just accessibility from the end user's perspective. You can use it anywhere in the world. Log in, have an internet connection, have a portable computer, and voila, log in. Honestly, also your phone often. Cloud is. Cloud does not require a server on the back end for the administrators, the people that own the system, the company that owns the system. As such, everyone's accessing it via a browser, which is great and easy.
So you only, in effect, need a browser on that. You don't need to get, you don't need to have like applications on a desktop. You can just access it through a browser.
Generally speaking, there are some systems that also augment it with a desktop application, or so it just depends on what the application is. However, this does cause throw a problem onto all the server applications. You just dump your server applications. I mean, it's not quite that easy. And so the answer is no. Is usually either a migration or an evolution to that, or potentially there's systems that can actually come on top of your existing systems and bring together cloud and server applications into a single browser.
So in effect, what you're saying is that the organizations need, if they weren't doing it pre-COVID, they need to be doing it now. Here in Europe, we're pretty much all onto our second lockdown, so we need to be provisioning cloud-based services now to work in a COVID world.
Yeah, so I often have said since COVID that IT had a reckoning on March 13th, or at least that's what it was in the United States here. Everyone else, give or take a week or two. But the reckoning is really that the old way of doing things, server-based technology, as well as the security implications for large-scale systems, is kind of finally met its maker to revisit this. Now, cloud has been out there since the beginning of Amazon. AWS really was the beginning of cloud, if you think about it. And they really, and Amazon Web Services didn't evolve because they just thought it was a great idea one day. They did it for their own selfish reasons. They needed to build the biggest marketplace in the world. And how are they going to do that? Well, they were going to do that where they could add back-end services on their side in their data center that could grow and expand and expand and expand. And then another familiar company you might be familiar that does this is Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Netflix even. Imagine Netflix. Think about Netflix. How does it scale to everyone in the world, really? And same thing with Facebook. And it never seems to have a hitch. That's because it's cloud. You can't do that with server architectures.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that as a business, we need to move towards cloud. Is that an easy thing, or is that difficult?
From an end user's perspective, it is an easy thing if the culture embraces it. And it's actually a very wise thing, because you save quite a bit of money at the back end administration side. Now, you could argue, the naysayers will say, oh, I'm going to lose my job and my expertise in this server architecture platform. But I would argue there's a reckoning to learn new systems. You don't lose your job. You just need to spread your wings and learn other techs. There's endless numbers of applications out there, and that a cloud system for an enterprise company doesn't run on its own. It still needs administrators. It still needs people to manage the user directories. It still needs people to do the provision. And most importantly, it needs people to do, say, the soft management consulting internally to get people to use the platforms properly. There's a lot of systems. I'll give an example. Salesforce. There's a common thinking in the industry that Salesforce is one of the most popular and most successful companies in the world, but most users use 5% of the product, not 95%. So there's 95% unused. And why is that? It's because IT often sets up a server, throws it over the wall, and said, "Good luck, team." And those days need to stop, in my opinion, especially with cloud. That's a good way to repurpose skills.
So in terms of the, if we're going to move to cloud, how do we start? I mean, what's the best place to start?
Well, move to cloud. Okay, let's take that phrase. It depends on where you're sitting in the picture. So if you're sitting at the CFO level,
there's an old Irish saying that when someone, if you go to an Irish person and ask them where the directions to a place, they always say it depends where you're starting from.
Yeah. Okay, so if you're an end user, you just need to pipe in your vote to IT and say, look, we saw this on the internet, we saw this system, and your IT in the past has always said, no, this is our policies, we do not allow that. And now you finally have a leverage point to say, look, this will save us money, this will make us work more efficiently, we need this. Now, they still might push back and say this is departmental or whatever. If you're in the IT side, there's two parts to it. There's the deployment part of a new cloud system, but there's value add additional services that they may create in their IT engineering department. And hopefully, if your company is not already exploring service-based design development architectures for additional in-house built systems, then they definitely need to get going. And that's really important. And I would argue they need to look up microservices architectures. I have on my LinkedIn, in fact, I have a great primer. Well, I think it's probably great. It's an end-to-end primer that talks about microservices and why microservices development. It is about our company partly in context, but not really. It applies to any service. And so that needs to start. If that hasn't started already, all right, don't panic. You're not late forever, but get going and move. So if you're the CFO and you are not, and the COO, as well as the CEO, as well as the CIO, if you are not pushing this yet, you will be out of a job within 3 years. So get going, because you're late. You are late, and there isn't a CIO that's worth its salt on the planet that will not have cloud services actively running, both their own as well as store-bought ones that they buy over the web in the next 5 years. That is just the way of the future. And I'm sorry to be so long-winded on this, but I can think of, that's why I call it the reckoning. The days of hanging on to those server technologies are over. Now, it will take some time to plan that out, but those days are over, and it is time to start moving forward to cloud. In my opinion, I don't mince words. Obviously, I'm not.
Yeah, no, and that's good. I think, and I think the people watching this want people to be direct. The last thing they want is someone that's not going to be tell them what they need to know. So if you're in a situation, you need to get a plan, I guess.
Yeah, so you probably do need to have, if you don't know anything about it, you probably do want to have a consultant that can help you with some basic design thinking about what your most pressing needs are in your company. Come up with your top 3 or 5 goals over the next 18 to 20 months. Some of these things can happen very quickly. They can be deployed within a month or within a week, honestly. They can be turned on that fast. However, you do want to have a successful cloud deployment, and that means don't just throw it over the wall like you did with other server technologies. On cloud, it's subscriber-based billing, so the clock keeps ticking whether you use it or not. So I think a lot of CFOs get worried about that. I was talking to a CIO a little while ago, and they're pretty progressive one. They had over 200 cloud systems in their company. Just about 1,000 people, and it's in the Silicon Valley. And her most pressing need was the CFO knocking on her door to get rid of some of those cloud systems. So the cloud can be also an unleashed pet, it keeps growing. So having some systems, having some plan, having some strategy, and understanding what the business needs are, and rethinking that from the ground up is a really valuable exercise and worth the salt of that consultant that you hire for that.
Right. And in terms of cloud, so you can get all kinds of systems on cloud, but you can get email. But I remember when we talked about in before, you were talking about there's other things that are good about email, which is the ability to get single sign-on.
Yeah. So Microsoft Office 365 is very good at pushing a lot of companies into the Microsoft sphere. It's not a requirement. Gmail, many companies are running on Gmail, but many companies are still running on an old Active Directory, or even Lotus Notes is out there. So, it does start at the directory, and not only the directory, then authentications into the directory, and security is, of course, very critical. You also may be buying another company or an M&A, and when you buy another company, you now inherit all their systems as well as their directory, which may or may not be the same, as well as their domain name that's tied to all their systems. And so this strategy around authentication, authorization, and single sign-on with third-party other systems is a valuable thing. You don't want your users to have to log in 16 times with 16 different browsers, or 60 different browsers, or even 600 different browsers, however many there are. A strategy around your authentication and authorization is super important. That strategy can be hand-driven, or it can be also through software. There is software that deals with these problems. You can imagine there's software to deal with a lot of things, especially in cloud, since cloud's been around for quite some time. So
what about so that's email and single sign-on, and having an authentication element to it. What about VPN, virtual private networks?
So the VPN software is still probably required if you do not have that. That was probably the biggest part of the reckoning. That VPN had been not sufficiently broadly enough delegated out to all workers. And let's say hourly workers or workers that were not always on their feet on the road did not have VPN access. So the only way they could access their work was to be at the office. And then in comes COVID, no more going to the office. That becomes quite a challenge. So all that is why the architecture and strategy needs to support all facets of the security design, and why that consultant is super valuable. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of what that security design should be, because the security design will vary depending on what your existing structure and architectures and systems are. It's amazing. There are companies that have some of the most cutting-edge platforms running in their systems, and they run as an island compared to the rest of their server systems. IT is not always the most modern house in the neighborhood. This is the opportunity for IT to do the remodel, if you will, on the house and get it there. And a remodel doesn't happen overnight. You don't get the kitchen and the bathroom and the bedrooms all at the same time, and the deck, as well as the you get it via a strategy and a plan, and step by step you get there. It's a journey, not a destination, and I think you need to remember that. But the value of it is what's most important. You're not just doing because it's cool to be modern or it's cool to be cloud. The value is directly proportional. There will be less people that have to manage those systems. You will be able to get more purposeful systems for different business problems. You will be able to single sign across all your systems. You will be able to perhaps federated federated authentication across your system if you do it right. There are ways to get there. You will have smaller footprints in the data center than you have right now, because your data center bill might be quite large. That's hosting all the server systems, so that will go away. So there's a lot of trade-offs that are positive, and in some ways a lot less risk.
Yeah. And so in terms of what about collaboration? Do you see, collaboration? I think most people see that as key, especially as the fact that we're now all working from home and we're not in the office and we're not able to walk down the corridor and say, "Hey, Helen, what are we doing about this?"
Yeah. So the way I got into this industry was really about collaboration. Originally, we were working with Atlassian systems, and I would argue they were the one platform, server-based platform, that had the most APIs in enterprise software. And they were coming and taking hits directly at systems like that IBM's full suite of development software was offering in the 90s and the early 2000s. They effectively did that, and they won that market by not just underselling them in price, but they also won it because of their APIs and the ability to allow them to extend the systems. So they also were very heavily, some of their APIs were about social collaboration, both at the development side as well as just documentation. And moving away from documentation and systems that are server-based documentation, where the technical writer holds the keys to all documentation. And every time you want to cross a T, you need to log something to the technical writer to get that T crossed, which is another old school model that has been a long time having a hard time dying. I know that quite well. That was actually the model that I was fleeing from early in my career, except it took a little longer than I expected for the market to change. And collaboration starts with the systems having extensibility, the system having these social share capabilities, the systems that you buy, the cloud systems, allowing you to collaborate across multiple people on the same issue or the same doc. Many people use Google Docs as an example. Google Docs obviously is a cloud system, Gmail, fueled by your Gmail, which is a cloud email system.
Yep,
so, but people don't always use that in central IT in large enterprise, because a lot of times central IT doesn't like Google for whatever reason, and Microsoft got in there. Microsoft starts teasing with shared documentation, but people still save out to their desktop. And that's a cultural change that needs to start and happen. And the more systems that are integrated, the better that can happen. We have a platform that we, because of this problem and because of the extensibility, that's why we dove into integrations. We felt customers endlessly were having a problem with integrations between the many different systems, because every vendor cared about their own system only, first and foremost. And then they'd go, oh, of course we have integrations. And they'd have some button on the corner that linked to the other system. A link is not an integration, period. It's just not. You have to have that integration that ties into the workflow in collaborative shares. And I would even take it one step further. It should also have single sign-on amongst the other system. It should be secure. it should have an immersive experience of that other third-party system directly in the system that you're collaborating in. That is a comprehensive cloud, integrated cloud platform,
right?
And collaboration.
Right.
People sometimes say, "Oh, that's really complicated. How would we ever do that?" And is that really make a difference? I would argue for every 10,000 person company that saves 2 minutes a day for each one of their users, you just bought that system, and now you're going to start making money. Yeah. You don't have to save a lot of minutes to make money. Yeah. You do need to change the way you're doing business, though.
Yeah, really good point, Ellen. Really good point. And
CIOs, I think, really need to be thinking of themselves as strategic business development.
Yes.
CIOs have the keys to strategic business development, in my opinion. They really can make money for their company if they take a step back on their plans and start thinking about themselves and how they're going to make money. If they change their internal IT development team from server-based technologies or just Java developers or whatever they might be doing, I'm not belittling Java developers, that's not my point. But if they change them into microservices development, they will benefit. Now, microservices is a new skill, and they need to learn this. I'll recommend a book, as well as a consultant, Chris Richardson, a guy I met actually 20 years ago in my career, early in my career. He has one of the best microservices, and he offers it in COVID. He's been offering some great deals. It's called Microservices Patterns, also including with Java. So he's allowing an off-ramp from server technologies to microservices design. One thing about microservices design and development is to really devil is in the detail on microservices. It is important that you just don't think any old Java developer can become a services developer. A services developer, think about it, it's architecture. It's a little bit beyond just application development. So you want to evolve your team to be more architects. Now, you should and could have a whole team of architects, and they can all collaboratively work together, because the great thing about microservices is that you are making things in modular services that collectively make a whole, and it's very collaborative in its development models.
Ellen,
a lot more to say on that, but I leave it at that. Yeah.
Okay. Ellen, we're at 20 minutes, so we're at time really. Is there anything else you want to say today about cloud and service-based products, and why, as an organization, we should do that?
So, if you don't mind, I'll just put a plug in for our own product.
Yeah,
our
sure.
Our platform, AlohaCloud, is it's named Aloha for a reason. It's as big as the problem, which is the beach, and which is the ocean, which is an enormous problem. And we think if you bring in Aloha, it's going to bring you that joy, because IT is such joy right now. Not IT has evolved into quite a mess and not joy. But AlohaCloud, more seriously, is an umbrella platform that allows you to bring all your systems together under one umbrella. So you have a single browser that accesses and uses all the different systems in context, including single sign-on, including all those nasties. And so then the development team can really start working on higher important things, which are very specific microservices that will add value to their company. If you can take IT out of the trenches and raise them up as architects to be very purposeful business goals, you change the game in terms of how much money you can make for your company. That is a longer term plan that every CIO, more CFOs, I would argue, should want. Now, CFOs might not know how to do it, but they can certainly give the directive to their CIOs, go do this. We need to do this. There's many experts to do this, to help on this. And I'm happy to, either via our platform or just share other platforms that I'm quite familiar with to how to get through there, depending on where you're at, as well as other consultants too.
Ellen, thank you so much for your time. It's been really insightful in terms of, getting people to understand the move to cloud and the fact that it's difficult, but, there's help out there.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Yes. And remind people where they can get hold of you.
Again, you can reach out to me in LinkedIn at my name, Ellen Feaheny, Feaheny. I'm also on Twitter with the same name. You can also direct me direct at ellen@appfusions.com.
Ellen, thank you so much for your time and your insight today.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Hey, you too.